I met Mr. Tathagat at a conference which we organized called Agile Carnival Chandigarh at ISB, and we were privileged to have many people from TiE also at that same conference. So he took many sessions out there, and one of the sessions called My Leadership Lessons at Tathagat struck a chord with almost everyone present, and we wanted to make sure that we get Mr. Tathagat again in Chandigarh. And so he called me a few days back. He said he's coming to Chandigarh for some client work, and I thought, why not have him at TiE session? So today, here we are with Mr. Tathagat. He is based out of Bangalore, and he's an independent agile and management coach. He started his career with DRDO in the year 1991, and then he went on to work for loads of companies at senior management levels, including Siemens, Philips, McAfee, Yahoo, etc. So he was last at, I guess, 24/7 Innovation Labs, where he was VP. And he handled product development at McAfee also. He became the head of operations India there. He resigned from Yahoo after more than 3 years of experience, and he was a senior director of business operations at Yahoo India. He's also from 10,000 startups, and he's also a mentor at Google Launchpad India. Today, he's going to speak on the topic design thinking. And Mr. Tathagat is not only a speaker, he blogs as well. You can check out his blog on managewell.net. And he's also coming out with a book with a very famous New York publisher, a major New York publisher, about which we'll also talk about. So let's give a big round of applause.
For giving me a chance to come and speak here. Thanks to Silvertree for organizing it. I want to actually talk about design thinking because I think it might be of interest to many of us. It is an area that's picking up a lot of prominence in the last few years, especially Apple's entire experience. So I want to basically share some of these stories with all of you. And hopefully give some of the ideas to people in terms of, hey, why don't we find some of these ways of doing it? So, design thinking is what we are going to talk about. When Henry Ford came up with the first car 100 years back, there is a very famous saying that was ascribed to him. He said, "You can have any color of car as long as it is black." The whole thing was, he built such a hyper-efficient system for producing cars, but he said, sorry gentlemen, sorry ladies, there cannot be any customization. You take it, I will give it to you, every piece is going to be exactly same. Using that approach, he was able to build very successful Ford production system. So when he built the most famous Model T, first time it was selling at $750. Over the next 19 years, he was able to bring the prices down to $160. With the single philosophy that you can have any car as long as it is black. Don't ask me for any customization. Don't ask me for even as simple as a color change. Customers did not have a choice. Customers had never seen a car. The reality in US at that time, and very sure reality in India was at that time, a majority of people, because the only thing that could have carried them 15 or 20 miles was a horse carriage, because there was no car at that time. So 90% of the people had never lived beyond a 15-20 mile radius. They were happy to get the car. So it was like, you are getting the car, don't ask for anything more. Right? That was the kind of a thinking from a product development point of view. When it came to telephones, in US, AT&T had the monopoly over telephones. In fact, they had so much of monopoly that nobody was allowed to even put any other non-AT&T instrument on the telephone network. Very similar case we will see in India also happened to us. Some of us might remember that we were not even allowed to put anything other than ITI standard equipment. Right? Again, customers were given a basic facility, but there was no choice. Nobody was asking them or building products that they could have done to improve their experience. Let's look at closer on what was the situation. And we are all familiar with the so-called license Raj era, right? Where the government decided, the government said, this many cars will be made, this many motorbikes will be made, this many scooters will be made. Because the raw material was an import item and the government controlled that. And the government did not allow more than that to happen there. So let's see what was happening. We had typically one car, We were a one-car nation, right? Till Maruti came and changed the scene, we were all on the good old ambassador. Customers did not have a choice. They had to basically deal with only one thing. We were literally a one-scooter nation, right? Maybe it was Lambretta, maybe it was telephone. You had to deal with and you had to accept whatever product and service our nation-old carrier was giving there. And let's see what is the situation now. In the last 20-30 years, how things are changing. If we look at phones, from one phone we have come to a plethora of choices. Anyone can choose n number of phones that they would like to do, right? If we look at even cars, for example, there are so many different types of cars that are available. They are increasing every single day. Even things like toothbrush, you have so many choices available. So what is all happening here in terms of when people are building products and services? With so many different options available to the customers, how do you and I, as the product developers or service providers, differentiate? Because everything looks the same. In fact, if we take out our smartphones, they all have exactly same kind of thing. Only thing is, there is only one thing which is the user experience, which is different. Some of us want a Samsung user experience, some of us want a Xiaomi user experience, and some of us want an Apple experience. Functionality-wise, it's all the same. So how do you, when you are developing a product or a service, how do you differentiate in the minds of customer? That is the biggest challenge that is facing all of us, right? And that's what I would like to share some of the stories, how some of these companies which have done phenomenal work in building a very different type of product are doing it. Now, if you don't mind, I just want to ask you a question. Anyone has been on an MRI machine? Not that I would like any of you to be on the MRI machine. Yeah. It's a painful experience. It takes 30 to 40 minutes. It's a very cold, metallic kind of a thing. There is a lot of noise there. It's a very traumatic experience for somebody to be lying on an MRI table. Am I right, sir? Yeah. It's not something that we would like to do all the time. Right? It's running away. It also scares the children. So you are a doctor. The statistics are in US, 80% of the children need sedation just so that we can put them quietly on the MRI table. I'm sure there are similar numbers in India as well. So you can imagine these are 5-year-old children, 6-year-old children. We want to save their lives by alleviating their pain and giving them the right medicine as early as we can. But the process of diagnosis is so painful that children have to go through such pain. So there was an engineer at GE Healthcare. GE is one of the world leaders of MRI machines. So Doug Leeds was an engineer at GE Healthcare. He said, so he went to one machine. He went to a hospital where they were installing one of the GE machines. He saw a 6-year-old girl there with the parents, and they were having this kind of conversation among them. The parents were telling, listen honey, we had spoken about this at the home, you need to go there, don't be scared of it. And that 6-year-old girl, she had big tears rolling down her cheeks. She was scared to enter that room. Maybe she has had a previous experience of being in an MRI room. She was scared, she was not willing to step inside the room. When Doug Leeds saw that, he said, I'm a guy who I've been building MRI machines for 20 years. He felt bad about it. I am building machines that are supposed to help people and children, but this is scaring the children away. So he decided to do something very different. At that time, he did not have enough budget to go and change something, but he did something very, very radical. So I'll show you how the machines look like after what he did, and then I'll tell you. Is this the same MRI machine that we saw? It looks like something out of Disneyland. So he radically altered the entire ambience of that to look like something straight out of a Disneyland fairy castle. Scholars adventure series where it was looking like a pirate ship. So the children were told a story, and children were invariably the hero of the story. The technicians were told to build a story around that. So the children would then go there, and they are the hero, and then they will say, okay, let's go and kill. From 80%, they did not do anything else in technology. They changed the experience with which children were approaching that and brought it down to 10%. For Doug Leeds, the most special moment was when he saw another child going out of the MRI and asking his parents, Daddy, can we come again tomorrow? So that was the level of change that he was able to do. He learned how to build products which could be better perceived by users of that. So this is one example that is there. Let me tell you another story here. You have heard of Tathagat, right? Tathagat started from Indore, from Bhopal, I think, in 1958. Tathagat is India's largest print media house. In 1996, they decided to go to Jaipur. At that point in time, they did something very radical. Their goal was to displace the market leader. Now, anybody here from printing industry? So typically what we see is in the printing industry, the first few years are very, very loss making. Because you have to set up distribution network, you have to set up advertisement network. The first 3-4 years you are bleeding money all the time. But after that you make so handsome profits that nobody wants to get out of that business. Tathagat took that as a challenge and said we will do something different. They said we want to be number one in every new city on the day one of our entry. Nobody in India had ever done it at that point in time. So what they did was they took about 700-800 volunteers and they sent them to about 2 lakh households in Jaipur. They just went out to them and said, we are from Tathagat, we free. They did not go with the feeling that said, we are Tathagat, we know what you want. They went with the feeling of humility and said, can you tell us what kind of a newspaper you would like to read? So they got lots and lots of responses. They processed that. They created a newspaper in response to the feedback. And they sent those 700 people back to the same households and told them, hey, we came to your house 2 weeks back, 4 weeks back, and you told us what kind of a newspaper you would like to read. We have prepared a newspaper exclusively based on your feedback. Can you tell us if you like this newspaper? And if you like it, I am willing to take your subscription against a 2 rupee. I am going to offer you at 1 rupee 50 paisa for next 1 year with a money back guarantee. As a result of this strategy, on 19th of December 1996, Tathagat entered Jaipur. Rajasthan Patrika was number 1 with 1 lakh copies. Tathagat had 1,77,000 copies on day 1. Something that had never happened in India. They repeated the same experiment. I believe in Chandigarh they came in 2000 and they did exactly the same thing. And I believe they have been the market leader in the because at that time nobody used to read Hindi newspaper in Chandigarh. The quality was perceived to be low, but they were able to change the perception based on that. So here again you have a person, you have a team which is building their products and services in a radically different manner, but applying the same kind of principles, going to the customers, talking to them, listening to them, building some ideas, and not just going with a one-size-fits-all thinking and saying, we are the expert, we know what to write for you, but really listening to them and building the product around their needs. So this was another great example of that. This is another example I like to give. This is actually, maybe the picture is not, Jeffrey Archer is the biggest storyteller of our time, right? So he said, has it happened to you that after you published a novel, you felt I should have done that ending little differently? Maybe that was not the best ending, but based on the feedback, we should have changed that story a little bit there. So Jeffrey Archer gave a very interesting response to that. He said, when I am writing a story, I don't have one story going on in my mind. Can you guess how many stories Jeffrey Archer might be writing at any point in time, which will actually end up in one book? Any guesses? Any number?
20 weaves around all the stories.
He weaves around all the stories, right? But yeah, your number is very close to what Jeffrey said. So he basically said, I have about 14 to 15 stories at any point in time. And I'm constantly going through, sometimes give a lot of credit to people and say, these people are geniuses, they can think of a story. But guess what? They are like you and me, they are experimenting with the different ideas, they are tossing it in their minds and saying, maybe this idea is better, maybe this idea is not so good. They are willing to discard ideas and pick up the ones that look more appealing to them. Right? So this was another example of how somebody in the publishing industry is basically applying similar kind of a thinking. This is a very interesting example. There is a doctor in California. His name is Scott TiE. And Scott TiE is one of the best known knee surgeons in California. He is about 65, 68 years old, has been around for a long period of time. And he is, like I said, he is a knee specialist. One day the idea came to him and said, I am the guy who takes care of So he told his other friend, can you operate on my knees? Because I want to understand, I have read in the theory books, where is the pain center, how does it help, how does it hurt and so on. But I want to go through the same pain myself. And by the way, I want to go through that without anesthesia. Now, as a doctor, I'm sure you know there are a lot of cases where doctors, this is one community where a lot of doctors have done self-experimentation. There is a rich history of doctors, but this guy said, I'm not going to go through anesthesia, operate my knee. He got his knee operated. The pain was so much, he said, forget the other knee. Just I'm okay with the one knee, I have learned enough from there. But that learning gave him the sense of empathy about the people whom he was treating, like no other experience, no other medical school was able to give. He became such a great doctor, not because of his educational qualifications, but because he was able to develop a sense of empathy for his customers, his patients, that he understood, he could say, I know what it means to you, because I have gone through the same thing. Now, all of us don't have to go through a knee surgery just to be expert in that, but this is another story of how somebody like that. So his patients actually gave him in 2012 most did that. This is a video. I don't have it here, but I could show it if we have time. But let me give you another example from India. This is a very interesting experiment that was done in Hyderabad. Now, in most of the places in India, women have to walk. They have to carry the water over their head. They have to walk a few miles or some distance. They draw the water from the open well, and then they basically bring that water home. So there is a company, there is this social NGO, Nandi Foundation. What they did was, they said people fall ill all the time because that water is contaminated. There is a lot of bacterial contamination. It's an open well. Why don't we give better? And that will allow, it will be all localities. It will be a cheap way of giving clean water, higher quality water, so that people don't have to commute a long distance and do that. They opened up these centers. They initially started looking at it. People did not sign up. They thought people would like it, women would like it, because they don't have to carry the water on their head, and the quality, it was very cheap, but nobody really came there. And then they started wondering, why are people not taking it? Now it's a very complex logic. So if you give me a minute, I'll explain you why that was happening there. Any guesses? Anyone has any guesses? You want to think why women were not willing to use that?
General resistance to change, why should we do?
So there is a general resistance, but then the alternative was much better, medically better, cheaper. It did not require them to walk along.
Maybe they were not told about those all these benefits.
So possible, but so let me tell you what really happened. The women realized that the jerrycan that they had to carry was actually typically come on a two-wheeler, so that they could sit on the back seat and they could carry those water canisters. In the daytime, the male members of the house were away for the job, so they came late in the evening, by the time the center was closed. Now can you imagine that smart people who designed the solution missed out some of the finer elements of human behavior? Technologically, there was nothing wrong in that. Price point was much cheaper than any other option. Quality was much higher. But we missed out the human element, what causes human behavior, exactly to the point that people have different expectations from a product. They are not looking at only technology or a price point. They are looking at the whole 9 yards. So what they had to do was, a simple thing was basically reduce this into something smaller, allow women to buy lesser amount of water, and that's all the problem. Solution looks very simple when you think about it, but if you look at the problem solving steps there, it requires a different perspective. It requires me to step away from my role as a product designer or an architect or an engineer and go and sit with the people and say, can you tell me what are your pain points, how are you solving these problems? That is a very different perspective, right? Similarly, in US they did an experiment on, this is a video on YouTube. I don't tell the story, but this was one experiment they did. They said, how do we fight childhood obesity, which is becoming an alarming level in the US, right? So they were deciding on something, and they applied some similar principles to basically improve the habit of exercise with children. This is an example from, I'm sure nobody knows Malayalam here, but this was a Malayalam movie that was made. Now, if you know about Kerala, there are two big superstars. Mohanlal and Mammootty. So they were making a movie with Julie Chawla where both were her love interest and one of them is to die. Now in Kerala you cannot kill any of them because they are demigods, right? What they found was that in North Kerala, Mammootty had bigger following, so naturally you cannot touch him there. Mohanlal had bigger following in South Kerala, you cannot do that. So they made two endings of the movie. In one ending which was released in North Kerala, Mohanlal dies, and in the other movie, Mammootty dies. I believe they even had third ending in mind where Shah Rukh Khan was supposed to come and act in that, where both of them get killed, but for some reason it never took off. Now here you have another interesting case where depending on the what people like to, even in the entertainment, they have very clear choice. If you sell them something different, they are going to reject it. I think is right. But they went with the humility and saying, okay, we believe that there are two different markets, so we'll have two different movies out. And they were happy to do that. So what is common in these stories? Right, I told you a few stories there. Any thoughts on that? Because I was trying to come to a pattern out of it. You would like to kind of share your thought? What do you think is a common?
About the user.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the same, the consumer behavior understanding and reacting according to that.
Correct. So we are not going with a one-size-fits-all thinking and saying, I know exactly, we are trying to learn from them, we are trying to iterate on them. So this is what is really all about design thinking. And design thinking is really not about problem solving, because our traditional problem solving is, what is 5 plus 5? We ask people, from a childhood stage, we start asking what is 5 plus 5. This is a traditional problem solving which really looks for one right answer. What we are interested in is the design thinking which says what is 10 can be represented as multiple things. I can represent 5 plus 5, I can represent 300 by 3, I can represent 15 minus 5. So I am looking at various options, I am looking at various ways of solving the problem. I am not going with one right answer, but I am looking at infinite number of solutions, and my focus is really on asking the right questions as opposed to saying there is only one right answer to this problem. So that changes the whole game there. So what is design thinking? It is not about design as a noun. A lot of people say, oh, this is a great design, like I have this clicker in my hand, it is a great design, it has a great form factor, it fits very well in the hand, I can really use it. That is not design thinking, that is design. That's a good old user experience, product design, industrial design, visual design, but not design thinking. Right? It's much more important. It is also not design as a verb, which is the process of designing something. Right? And it is also not thinking alone, it is more doing than thinking. Right? So what is design thinking? Right? Let's look at what is design thinking. A simple definition is it is innovative, people-centric problem solving. It's a problem solving. We are trying to solve a certain problem, whether it is Scott TiE trying to look at the need problem, whether it is Nandi Foundation looking at why people are not buying their water, or is it Dainik Bhaskar who wants to be number one. We are all trying to solve a problem. It is people-centric. We are not treating people as machines there, that whatever we give it to them, they are going to accept it. Remember, people have choices. They have much more choices than what I can offer them as an individual manufacturer or service provider. If I don't satisfy them, they will go to my competitors and they are going to shop with them. And it is looking at innovative solutions. We are not looking at standard solutions, that is run-of-the-mill solutions and say, the first thing that comes to my mind, I just go and implement that. I am looking at more creative ways of problem solving. So put simply, it is just looking at these 2 or 3 things there. It is, so like I said, it is innovative, it's basically looking at some of these things. It is people-centric, so we are focusing on people, not on technology. For a long period of time, we have been building based on technology. We said, hey, this is a great technology, let's go and build a problem. We literally say, okay, let's create a problem because we have a solution. That kind of thinking. Whereas we are changing our perspective and saying, let's first find the problem and then we will implement a solution to that. And then it is a real problem solving because the end objective is a practical solution. We are not saying it is just a pie in the sky, it has to be a real solution that we are delivering to the customer. Now, so if we see in this diagram, design thinking is basically at the intersection of 3 circles. We start first with the people part of it and we understand desirability. What is it that people like to have? If you saw Dainik Bhaskar example, we ask people, what is it that you would like to have, right? People are trying to understand the different elements of what human needs are. Then we understand the technology. Is it even feasible? Does the technology even support that kind of a thing? Or I'm saying I'm going to build Taj Mahal in the air, but the technology doesn't support that kind of a thing. So people might need it, but if there is no technology to support it, then maybe I cannot build that. And finally, as a business, it has to be viable. Airlines, that cannot be a sustainable business, so it goes totally bankrupt at some point in time. Any business must be sustainable. You cannot be undercutting the prices beyond a point. You have to make a business case out of it, right? I'm sure within TiE network, when you talk to entrepreneurs, those are some of the things. A lot of people come and say, oh, we will monetize it based on this. But if they don't have a good monetization, it fails them. What happens is, in technology-heavy companies, we really drive it from a technology. So we ignore the people with books on the net. Their founder, Jeff Bezos, had a brainwave 2 years back. He said, I'm going to build world's most technologically advanced phone. So he built a phone which had a 3D display. It has 4 cameras on the front. So it triangulates that and it is able to provide it's able to provide a 3D perception and so on. The Kindle Fire phone was launched last year in May at $200. Within 1 month, from $200, they were selling it at under $1 because there was no market for that. Technologically, was there anything wrong with that? No. Technologically, it was a great phone, ahead of its time. Maybe even there was a business case because at a price point of $200, Jeff Bezos, being Jeff Bezos, he probably had figured out how to make money out of it. But people did not want it. It was very clear because within a month it's just analysis in my view. But that's a great example of how sometimes even the best technology cannot create the best product. So, is it a process? Because we talked about all these things. One question comes to mind, is design thinking a process after all that I can simply follow there? Let me share some viewpoints on that. As a design thinking, if you search on the net, you will typically find a picture like that, which says the first step is empathy. We are trying to understand more about the users, the target customers, and so on. Then we are going into defining the problem. So we are trying to say, okay, what exactly is the problem? We have spoken to hundreds of people, and now we have figured out what is the real problem. Not because I think what is the problem, but because people have told me what is the problem, right? Based on that input, I define my problem. Then I do ideation. When I do ideation, I am going with a very free thinking at this point in time. I am looking at all kinds of crazy ideas right now. In fact, many of us use LinkedIn, for example, right? The co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, has a great saying. He said, if your first idea does not embarrass you, you have already released the product too late. It should be crazy idea, because if it is not crazy, chances are you are already copying somebody's idea. We probably want to look at 100 other ways of solving the problem, because one of them is going to be the sure shot winner. Then we start prototyping it. We don't build the entire product at this point in time. We know that there's no point in investing 6 months of time and probably lakhs and lakhs of rupees or millions of dollars just to build something like Amazon's case. They built the product there, but there was nobody asking for that product. So we want to build a prototype and then we want to test it rigorously and then iterate on the same thing. So we go through this whole process of, first we are looking at defining, then we converge that process. So we are looking at a convergent thinking and then we are again diverging our thinking. So design thinking is a process in that sense, and these are the major steps that are involved in that. Like I said, empathy is the first step where we are observing and we are starting with insights and going into the empathy phase, because we want to understand more about whom are we solving the problem for? Who are the people who are having this pain point, right? A lot of times as startups, we get a brainwave sitting in the office and say, I think the world needs this, world has this problem. I mean, let's go out and check it. So there is a very famous author of name Steve Blank, and Steve Blank is the guru of the whole lean startup customer development model. He has a very great advice for all of us. He says, inside the room, there are only opinions. There are no facts inside the room. All we have are opinions. If you want to get data on facts, get out of the building and talk to the real human beings. The real human beings are the people who are walking on the street, who are liking to use with our products, not the people with whom we are building the product. So a lot of times, as startups, as entrepreneurs, as product developers, we make the classic mistake of assuming some of them, making the assumptions, but never validating them. So that's the whole idea of creating the empathy phase here. Then we define the problem, and we really are defining and focusing at that point in time based on what we have learned from the people. The idea is to constantly keep iterating on that idea itself and say, maybe that's a better way of doing it, maybe this is not the best way, why don't we look at something else and so on. And then we ideate on them. We ideate and say, hey, what are the different ideas available really? Why don't we do one thing? We are not going to judge you by the idea or the quality of your idea. Give as crazy ideas as you can. So a typical design thinking phase could go on in a way that we come up with 200 ideas. Now obviously some of those ideas will be very, very audacious, impractical, which we will have to eliminate there. But in ideation, what we say is, it is the quantity that leads to quality. So the more number of ideas you have, chances are that the better. I might say, if I give an idea, what will people think about it? Somebody will make fun of me, somebody might reject my idea. So fear of failure, fear of social rejection, any of these can hold me back from sharing my idea. In this kind of an ideation session, we make sure we create an environment where nobody is judging us. We don't want people to feel threatened by the social rejection of their ideas, right? So we create that kind of an environment. In your hands and really get the feedback and see what is your body language, what is your response to that. Do your pupils of the eye, do they dilate, or do you say, boring, let the next idea come there? How people respond to that idea there. So we want to really get to that point, and a prototype is really, I call it as a currency of conversation and a unit of feedback. It is something that is letting you talk to your customers. It is something that is letting your customers get a sense of where are you heading to and give an early feedback rather than a late feedback. After you have burnt all the time and effort and money, then you say, hey, this is a product that nobody wants it. I'll give another example. Some of you might have seen it on the internet. If you search for ghost cities in China, you will find China built about 10 to 15 megacities. People. And the idea was that they will basically create them as huge engines of economy. When you see those pictures, you will realize that they are so scary, nobody lives in those. They are beautiful, there is nothing wrong with them. They have even built Eiffel Tower, they have built the Vatican Square and everything there. It looks like a great place where anybody would want to live, but there is nobody living there. So they built a product there without getting any feedback, without really creating it. Nobody has ever lived in them, even after they were created there. So there is no point in really building something that nobody wants. I believe the biggest waste of human talent is to make people develop that nobody wants in this world. Right? Everything else is recoverable, but not the human talent. So we build a prototype and then we go on testing it. We don't want to definitely go around with our one-sided assumptions. We want to make sure in Bangalore, we do some projects there. I insist that anybody who comes up with an idea has spoken to at least 100 people. If you have not spoken to 100 people, you probably haven't got enough data points to form a clear-cut pattern whether people like your idea or they reject your idea. So go and talk to as many people and test your ideas there. Right? And as you would have guessed by now, this process looks like a linear process because I drew that in that fashion, but it is anything but linear. In reality, you go all over the place. Sometimes you go with the idea and then you realize, oh, when I tested it, it did not find anybody, nobody was interested in that. Can we go back and redo the whole thing there? So it's a very long, non-linear kind of a process. But even when it is non-linear, these are 4 or 5 activities that we will do. We might not do them in a particular order, we might not do them in a particular sequential order, but we will typically do these activities. To that end, it's a process, but it is not really a sequential process, that we know. On the other end, is it a mindset? Many people believe that design thinking is all about a mindset. It is not really a process, but it's more of a mindset there. So 2 of the best examples that we have in our generation is, one is at Stanford University, they have a design school. They also call it as a TiE school. And they are among the topmost researchers in the design thinking. And in Stanford, there is also, in Bay Area, there is also a design firm, you might have heard of the name IDEO. And IDEO is the world's leading design firm, IDEO. They developed the first Apple computer mouse 30 years back. The toothpaste that we used in the morning, the stand-up tube, was created by them. So they have done wonderful innovations in product creation using ideas like design thinking. And if you go to ideo.org, they have wonderful amount of videos, YouTube videos and so on how they are actually doing it. And they identified these 7 mindsets which they say are important for a design thinker or somebody who wants to solve the problems using design thinking. Focus on human values, as we saw that the first focus is really all about human beings. We don't want to focus on technology or business, but human beings first. Embrace experimentation. We want to make sure that we can create experiments that allow us to what we call as fail fast, fail cheap, fail forward. We know that any new idea I'm going to do is going to invite failures. The guy who created Dyson, who created the Dyson vacuum cleaners, he failed 5,200 times before he built the perfect vacuum cleaner that he wanted to do. When we were coming in the evening, Simar and I, we were talking about Jack Ma, the guy who has become China's richest man. He was rejected by Harvard 20 times. He was rejected by KFC. There were 25 people who were interviewed. 24 were selected. He was the only guy who was rejected. Imagine, you have to be so succeed there. Bias towards action. We don't want people to be sitting in a room and just talk about from PowerPoint slides. We want people to take their ideas, implement something, take it out on the streets, show it to the people and get some feedback. That is the most important part of it. Because PowerPoint doesn't give you any clarity whether people like your idea or not. The radical behavior, you are a customer support, you are a sales, you are a marketing. We want people to all come together. So in a design thinking kind of a session, we believe the ideas can come from anybody. It could be a sales engineer who can come up with a great idea because sales people are talking to the customer more than the software engineers are talking to them. So maybe they have better perspective to actually come back and do that. Be mindful of the process. You remember I showed the process. I said this is not really a sequential process, it's kind of a non-linear. But even then, the advice is don't kind of ignore that. Be mindful that there is a process, we have to complete the issue you are shipping something in a finite period of time. Craft clarity, don't make it too confusing. Right? Steve Jobs, his entire perspective was to make it so simple that from a 3-year-old child to an 80-year-old grandma, anybody can use my phone, anybody can use a tablet, right? And guess what? Apple products do not come with any user manual. There is no user manual that tells us how to use an iPhone or an iPod or any of the devices there. People learn how to do that. It's so intuitive, they figure out, irrespective, and the same product is given all over the world. So it has nothing to do with education, nothing to do with language, nothing to do with the prior experience with technology. People just, you leave them alone for a few days and they will figure out how to use it. And finally, show, don't tell. Don't tell really long stories here. Best way to get the feedback is show them, put something in the hands of customers and say, what do you think about it? Like the Derek Bhaskar kind of a thing there. Don't talk about it and say, we plan to do this, we'll do this. But show them that this is what we have done. How do you do that, right? So let me just recap there. We looked at multiple things here. Design thinking offers an interesting approach to solving people's problems. Fundamentally, it's solving problems but keeping people in the center of the equation. It is as much a mindset as a process, though it is not a process in a traditional sense that I have followed step 1, step 2, step 3 and so on. Right? It integrates elements from people, desirability, technology as in feasibility, and business from a viability perspective. Again, please remember, we are not saying that only people matter. We are very balanced in our approach when we employ design thinking, that we understand it might be a great design, like Jeff Bezos came up with a great design for a phone. Technology was great there, but people did not like it, so we are not going to focus only on one element of that. We want to focus on all the 3 elements at the same time. And this is especially relevant as we create more and more products and services for real humans. And real humans is a term that I like to use for the people. To that extent, if it's okay with you, we are not real human beings. The real human beings are your customers, because they don't care what effort you have put in building your products and services. They don't care what process have you used. They are interested whether it solves my problem or not. So as Lewitt, who was a great marketing guru, has said, people don't want a quarter-inch drill bit. People want a quarter-inch hole. Because that is the problem they are trying to solve. They don't care that you have a quarter-inch drill bit or not. They have a problem that I want to do a quarter-inch hole. Can you solve that problem for me? Right? So that is the perspective. So I just thought I'll share some of these perspectives from a design thinking point of view, using some of these examples. I think I'll stop here, but if there are any other questions or any feedback, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you. Just to share one very interesting thing, we all know McKinsey, right? The world's leading management consulting. There was a very interesting development recently. The world knows that when McKinsey does something, everybody copies it. So I think it's coming for the first time very clearly that somebody like McKinsey has seen that business strategy, that's what they have done for the last 80 years. They have done a great job of telling organizations about the business strategy. Now they are beginning to realize that they need to look at the whole elements of design and design thinking along with that. Because there is no differentiator left anymore. Because everybody probably has copied, all the best practices have been copied, people know what is to be done, outsourcing, product development, everything is done. So user experience is probably the most important factor. So I personally think the fact that McKinsey has decided to go ahead and acquire Lunar is a very important event, because pretty soon in the next few years we are going to see a lot of design importance. In India it's beginning to pick up. I'm seeing with the startup communities, there are a lot of design firms, a lot of other kind of work happening. It did not happen in the IT industry earlier because we were more in the services we did not have the charter or flexibility to do that. But now with more and more India-based product companies are coming there, they are beginning to do that. So I think that this is something which is an early wave right now from an Indian point of view, and it will pick up in the next few years.
One question. Experience. So in what form we should take it? Because maybe website is a different customer, maybe or physical product is different. So how we should make questionnaire and those things? So what the strategy we should follow for making?
Sure. What I have learned is that nothing replaces human communication. A lot of times we hide behind SurveyMonkey or a lot of other data. We try to do online surveys, but I think the real value is in human conversations. So if we can talk to hundreds of people, 50 people, 80 people, talk to them over a cup of coffee, listen to their pain, I think that will give us the most actionable insights. So in design thinking, we do what is known as customer insighting, and the whole idea of customer insighting is to get as much experiences as we can having an in-person communication. Obviously, in some kind of products, if that is not possible, we might have to do some online or questionnaire and so on. But if you have, let's say you are taking a very radical approach, you don't know whether people will like it or not. I personally think it is a well investment of your time and effort to go and talk to 20, 30, 40 people and really understand what is happening.
The example that you gave us, Mohanlal being more famous in the South. I'm just, imagining would the net revenue of the movie, would it have gone up if they had killed Mohanlal in the South, where he was more popular? The point that I'm coming to is we have hundreds of ideas. So I've got a product. There are a lot of things that we can do. At times it becomes very hard to decide on which idea to pick out. Now you can go and ask people, yeah, that's one thing that you can do. But and that is what the entire lean startup philosophy is. I think that's not it's just not the complete way of doing things, because oftentimes you show an idea or describe an idea to somebody and they would say, oh, it's perfect. That's absolutely amazing. But when they see it, it's a completely different thing. Now I've got 100 ideas. Do I spend my time, money in implementing 100 prototypes? like how do I even, so if you've got an organization, everybody has an idea, everybody wants, there will be egos involved, there will be God knows what involved, everybody wants to, everybody wants the product to go in different directions. How do you decide? Do you, talk to your customers about different ideas? Because by the way, that was, talking to a lot of people was the right way. Bigger companies would always have an edge over startups.
So it's not about having more money in the pocket.
Yeah, because they also have access to more people.
More people, yeah.
Right? Google can talk to 1 million people, I cannot talk to them. Right? So I can probably talk to 100.
So that also is kind of behind it. We don't know what is the winning idea, to be honest. Yahoo had an opportunity to buy Google for $1 billion. Yahoo blew up that opportunity. Yahoo had an opportunity to buy Facebook for $1 billion. Yahoo blew up that opportunity. Right? So nobody knows what is the right thing there. And that is why we favor, like in the lean startup thinking. What we are saying is, one of the things that Eric Ries talks about is the leap of faith hypothesis. It is the founder's belief. As a founder, I have spoken to hundreds of people and with no clear specific objective in mind, but based on all the things that I have heard from people, I believe there is a market for something like that. So what we are seeing is, typically there is one category of founders like redbus.in. A guy goes to bus stand because he wants to go to his native town during Diwali, does not get the ticket, finds out that the whole ticket distribution system is so broken that let's create a product to fix it. So he takes his personal experiences to basically validate his hypothesis. The other category could be that you look at a product and say, hey, why they cannot improve this product? It's like a no-brainer. Anybody would come up with a better idea, right? So they come back and it may not be a personal agony they have gone through, but they decide to go and improvise their product. Like Google guys, the search engines were already there before Google came, but they said there is a better way of doing it. Why nobody is doing it? And they built it and then they became the market leaders. Facebook was not the first social network as we all know, right? Neither was iPod was the first MP3 player. They just found a better way of. So Steve Jobs had a point of view which said, it is so difficult for people to have music shared across multiple devices. How can I solve the problem? So he did not go with the device, he went with the platform play and said iTunes is what is the right solution for that. So what we are learning is that there is no magic pill for that we can say that hey, this idea is going to be a sure shot winner. And that is why a founder has to probably go and talk to as many people without having an agenda in mind and say, hey, what is the problem? What is it? So how much time do you take in that? What are the kind of issues that you are facing there? And maybe then you get the aha moment. Okay, can I do something there which we can do that? So I'll give you another real example. In 99, at Stanford, two people started a new company of name Confinity. In 99, a lot of people in US and some of us in India used to carry the Palm PDAs, right? There was no smartphone that time, but we had the Palm PDAs. People were using it as their personal organizer and all. So they said we will build a product around the fact that if I have to share $10, if I have to transfer $10 to you, I have my Palm PDA, you have your Palm PDA, I use the infrared code and I can transfer the money. Looks like a cool idea, technology was there, infrared code, I can transfer the money. People did not like the idea. They got some 30,000 people to sign up on that. Then one of the engineers in the team came up with the idea and said, can we make one experiment here? Why do we need Palm PDA for that? We want to transfer the money, can we do it over email itself? Why do we even need to have Palm PDA there? Any guess which company became
eBay 0 to 1. eBay 0 to 1.
PayPal, right? Yeah. So PayPal was created not because the founder had a vision. Even those founders did not have a vision. But they experimented and they pivoted to that. I was reading some time back that Snapdeal has pivoted 6 times. So they started with some original idea and they have been pivoting and they probably have found now the winning idea there that is going to make them, they bought free charge and maybe Alibaba is going to buy them.
IBGO is another classical example. They are earning money from Go IBGO. They only had technology to actually do image algorithms, right? That's all they did, and they went nowhere with it. And that one pivot, and 9 months later, they were acquired $2 billion. It was just 9 months. It was not like a great amount of time also. They were acquired to begin. So even to add to the PayPal example, you must read this book, Zero to One.
Zero to One, awesome book, yes.
Right? So that itself he explained, even when PayPal started with email, they could not get users to register.
True, they paid.
So you know what he says? Okay, you get your friend to sign up $10 for you or $25 for you. He said it went through the roof. And the next thing that they did was that eBay integration. That's why eBay always comes to my head.
Correct.
Is they did the eBay integration, and now in the US, if you go, is actually amongst the investors, it's called the PayPal Mafia.
Yeah.
Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel, all of these guys are actually called so Max Levchin. All the cool ideas actually end up on their plate first. So anything that happens now, they get first right. So part is like he's absolutely right. There's no true way of doing this. You have to. So part to answer your question also when you come to product development. One idea is you build something, he said that also fail fast. You get a prototype, you get actual end users to sit with it and you notice that. So people do this video recording that is happening right now. So they just put the camera in the room, they put the user with the application and they see how they react. Right? And the bigger companies, so I have friends working, even Snapdeal for that matter, they have software which tracks that, for example, you're on Flipkart, you get to the end stage and you bail out. So they noticed 20% of the people would actually not complete the checkout. They would add the item to the cart but not complete the checkout. Probably not Flipkart, make my dream. So they went in and redid the checkout page. So there is software that monitors. So part is
they even sent actually an MMT loyal that, and you will get 250 rupees discount for coming. Because the cost of customer acquisition is so high, they are willing to pass another 250 rupees discount just to get you back there.
Apple also does the same thing if you buy.
Get that customer to do it. Is it linked to design? Yes, of course, but maybe that's more strategic than design element, right?
So I think as we have seen the strategy, now it is shorter, the timelines are much shorter. And people are willing to accept the power of experimentation and say, maybe I am not right here, I have a strategy, but maybe it's not going to work because the market is not ready for that. So the way I look at it is, I think strategy is something which has to be backed by enough data coming out from experiments, so that you are able to pivot that rather than following it and then make it as a sales and marketing problem. Because typically what ends up happening is we build some product based on the strategy and then we say, oh, sales is not able to sell it, and then we blame it on the market. Maybe it's possible that we had a wrong strategy to begin with.
Yeah. Again, I'm just going back to the. So the paper was.
Derek Bhaskar.
So market strategy, then let's ask people first. And paper is a paper.
True.
It's essentially a layout.
Yeah.
And maybe they understand what type of stories do people like. Let's just put those stories up.
Possible. Yeah.
So where would you say this is design and where would you say this is strategy?
I think they are getting to me enmeshed. The thinking was that I have these 4 wise men or 4 wise women, they are sitting in a boardroom and they are deciding how we should do that. But today we are willing to acknowledge how we learn it from people, and that is becoming a part of the strategy. So if McKinsey buys Lunar Design, I think it's a clear sign that the boardroom conversations are looking at embedding or enmeshing the whole design into the strategy as well. At least I see that as a very strong trend there. Okay.
I just have ideas everything. Now, if we wanted to do something similar for our company, right? In your experience, is this something that has to be driven by the leadership, or is it something that starts with the leadership and then permeates into the culture? So my question would be for Apple. Are they a success because of their leadership, or are they a success because of the company's culture? Because as far as culture is concerned, like Google has probably the most amazing culture there is, but they've had more misses than hits. Like every product that they launch is a failure.
Yeah, except the AdWords program, which is a commercial success.
Right, so that's their search engine is the only commercial hit that they've got. Everything from Google Plus to Google Glass has been a failure.
Wave, Buzz,
Everything has been a failure. So is it more about is the design philosophy? Is it supposed to be driven by the leadership? One man sitting on the top, throwing out ideas at his people, and those people executing it?
Yeah.
Or is it supposed to be people throwing out ideas and then executing it themselves?
So I think it depends a lot on the business and the culture. He was like one person. equal to probably hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs and visionaries. But not everybody can be Steve Jobs, right? We all wish we can hire somebody like him, but it's not going to happen. We all wish we could become like him, it's not going to happen. So most of the companies would be better off by creating a culture that supports experimentation, supports people to give ideas from the trenches as opposed to waiting for it. I'll just give 2 examples. When I was at Yahoo, we used to do hackathons. So the idea is that every few months we get everybody in the team and say, next 24 hours you will do whatever you want to do. There are no rules on that. If you don't build anything, we won't be upset that you have wasted 1 day of company's time. But we want to promote you to have a safe time where you are willing to do some experiments and build up something. And if you build something of value, maybe we have a winner there. I'll give you another data point. Adobe has done something very interesting. Adobe has come with something they call as Kickbox. And if you go to kickbox.adobe.com, it is a red color box which is available to any employee inside Adobe. What that box contains is a very small set of manuals. It even has a chocolate inside, and it has $1,000 of preloaded credit card. The idea is that any employee in Adobe who feels I have an idea, but most of the time the organizational process will kill you. You go there, oh, I have to do this $200 of book I have to buy, my manager will not approve that, all those kind of things will happen. Here they said, we will take away the friction from the system. No questions will be asked if you just go and blow up $1,000 from your personal account. But we believe you will do it for the right reasons, and we want to make it so easy for you to do some experimentation. And then if you come to the next level, we have more and more things waiting for you. So some companies are trying to change the culture of the organization by doing some experiments like that. Now Adobe experiment only kicked off a few months back, so we don't know any success out of that. Hopefully there will be success. But again, if you have a visionary like a Steve Jobs, go ahead and do something radical there, that's the best thing. But if that cannot be, that's not an option, then at least build a culture. And that I think is a leadership call. I don't think if I am a junior software engineer or a junior sales engineer, I would have the mandate to always go and change it. Sometimes I might be able to influence my upper management, but I may need more support from my upper management. So I think it's a leadership call.
I think, can I add one point? Actually, most of the time what happens is that if you are at the top, you have to keep listening to your employees, your customers, the kind of experience they are going through, and ultimately you pick something from that and make it into your experience. Right? It doesn't happen that you have the idea. Right? I still remember one of the classic cases which changed the entire industry, ice cream industry. Till a good point of time, there was clear segmentation. The quality ice creams were only sold at high-end restaurants, and the cheap ice creams were sold at the tailors. Right? So when quality walls came in, and one of their CEO who was a foreigner, he said, why don't you sell the ice creams on premise? They have a distribution. And that being said, what will happen to our brand? Right? He said no. Improve the thela, make it beautiful. And today, if you see, it has changed the entire course of the market. Right? The point I was making is probably a lot of people would have floated this idea. But this is the guy who invested in that idea. So I think leaders do get ideas. The problem is most of the time they provide their own notion. That's why I think the problem.
Many a times people may not know what they want. The same philosophy, which worked for Apple or which worked for Ford, or for example, when you had no vacuum cleaners, people would say we would need better brooms, right? So how do you relate these two thoughts? If you go to people, you can't be inventing anything from 0 to 1.
Right.
You'll be doing the horizontal growth.
True.
How do you do vertical growth in that sense if you go to people?
Yeah. So again, there is no easy answer to pain points. Look at it this way: Henry Ford did not make a car. Henry Ford solved the mobility problem. People would not have told him about the car, but had he asked people, he would have got the response, oh no, we are not able to travel far distances. because my horse carriage cannot go, my horses get tired after 20 miles. I wish there was a way for me to go 100 miles. I would like to go more than 100 miles and explore the world. So what he really solved in my view was not he provided a car to people, but he was solving a mobility problem. So that's how I would look at it. So yes, when you ask people about car, they will not know, because if that is not their mental model, they cannot tell. But if you ask them about the mobility problem, they will tell you all the problems they have. So that's how I see
I like to interfere over here. Coming out with a lot of things. We were experimenting. We were at liberty. There was no competition. When the competition came in, then people come in. So when there's a new mobility, when he was solving mobility, he was a market leader. So when Varma or the other brands came in, then the competition started which car is going to solve people's problems. So then people come in. So when you are building up a new idea totally out of the box, which is not there, like Apple did it, or Microsoft did it, or Google did it, they were market leaders. They came up with something new. So people come in when there is competition. So this is where the differentiation.
Yeah, I would just like to add, take a minute and you talk about your idea. It's going to be very hard for you to get the correct picture. I found it to be a much better exercise to, no matter what problem you are trying to solve, if you are trying to solve a taxi problem, is actually to go through their experience or even travel with them. So we were solving a customer support problem, and I spent days and days just shadowing customer support people. Because I think that gives you much better insight into what you're doing, is to get a grip on what their lives look like. And then once you've solved the mystery in your head, it's still going to be worthless to talk to them, because people, it's very hard to explain what you have in your head to people. I think a much better experience is to understand what their lives look like, prototype something, and then sort of try and introduce that into their lives and then see how it does. Keep pivoting.
Exactly the same point. The individual first, then the people.
Right. But it's much more important. Exactly what he was saying is to understand their lives, which is much more important, and what they're using now, and how understanding the pain in their lives. So instead of thinking about their idea, it's think about their pain.
Thanks a lot.
So now would you please come and take your seat for the class. Dr. Sir, I give you time after this. So when you were talking about Varma Valley, I haven't gone through. My son was 3 years old when he fell from the bed. Doctor suggested he be taken to the hospital, and he was not sleeping, and he couldn't put in the machine because he was not sleeping. We didn't want to put him on sedative. We kept waiting, and he didn't sleep. We went back home. Example where they came out to the DVD with different endings, and this is the quality of a good speaker, when everyone can relate to whatever he is saying, and he makes it easy for everyone to understand the things. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And as a token of thanks, I request Mrs. Chandandeep Kaur to present a token of thanks to Mr. Tathagat Varma. A common vote of thanks.
I guess Mr. JD guys covered most of it. Anyways, just a quick summary. I personally really, I speak for all of us, I really enjoyed the topic. In fact, going back probably around 5-7 years back when we started doing web development, the first book that I actually read was Don't Make Me Think. So this was actually about usability, which actually spoke from a very different perspective, coming from this kind of, we never think in terms of design. And the classic example is, we've all been talking about Apple, Steve Jobs. The tablet, Windows Phone, everything was there way before the Apple device ever came. It was actually the usability of the device. Windows Phone, I probably used a Windows Phone in 2003, 2004. They had a tablet also. Everything was out there in the market. But none of it was easily usable. And like he said, for an iPhone or an iPod, you don't need a manual. You simply give the device. Your own kids are prime examples. You just hand them the device and they use. I don't know, part of this story is not up to mark. I'm not happy with this. So the guy said, no, nothing more can be done. And this is it. This is the final product. So they say he saw an aquarium lying nearby. He picked up the thing and dropped it into it.
it, air bubbles came out. He said there's space inside. So you can actually do something. I honestly don't know it's true or false, but it's a very logical explanation. If the bubble is there, that means there is space inside. So anyways, to cut it short, it was a brilliant talk. We really enjoyed it. Next time you're in town, we'd be glad to host you again and probably do a bigger hands-on workshop which is more interactive for the members. Thank you very much on behalf of that. We'd like to do a quick group photo, please.